Welcome to the Ask Dr. Deanna show. I'm Dr. Deanna Holgren, your host. Join me weekly as I cover various health-related lifestyle medicine topics that you get to request. This show is for anyone who wants to proactively improve their health position. I hope you enjoy the show. Hey everybody, thanks so much for joining me today. This is our back to school series. Today is part 2 of a 3-part series to help focus on back to school and getting kids everything that they need to help support them nutritionally, to help get them back on schedule, to address needs from a rest standpoint, and just really to help them thrive and just function at their highest level, their most optimal level. Today, we're going to be talking about your student athlete. I have a lot of parents who will ask me about supplementation for student athletes, what they should be taking, what they shouldn't be taking, etc. And I kind of break this down into, groups. Obviously, we've got a lot of youngsters, elementary age students who are participating in sports. It's kind of an entry level for them. It's a lot of fun. It maybe isn't as taxing as it would be for a junior high or even a high school student in terms of the amount of calories burned and so forth. And so most of the time for your elementary students who are in sports, there really aren't a lot of extra needs. It's basically just feed them when they're hungry, that sort of thing. Make sure that they have a snack maybe before their event, after their event, that sort of thing. And usually they kind of let you know, and you can kind of allow them to be the guide. I think the biggest thing for kids in this age group is hydration for those younger kids, because a lot of times, they can dehydrate pretty quickly. And if you happen to be outside for that sporting event and you're outside for a prolonged period, a lot of times kids just don't like to drink. And so they can dehydrate quickly. So just making sure that you are addressing needs from that standpoint, making sure that you're, applying a good, safe, mineral-based sunscreen, that sort of thing can really make a difference for them. But let's talk a little bit more about those junior high kids, those high school kids who are incredibly active. They are burning so many calories with their sporting events. These kids sometimes, if they are, if they have a practice that's a 2-hour practice, they can easily burn through 600 to 1,200 calories in that 2-hour time period. So how do we meet their needs? What do we do for them? How do we help them to function at their highest levels? Rest is super important. And I always want people to keep that in mind, because if we are not well rested, we do not perform at our best. We don't perform at our best mentally. We do not perform our best physically either. So rest is super, super important. And when we are not getting proper rest, the incidence of injuries actually will increase. Just like, if you're not getting good rest, the incidence of, car accidents, for example, will increase as well. So the same with kids. They're more likely to injure themselves if they're not well rested. So that's important. And, there are certain calorie and macronutrient needs for these kids. And sometimes, those vary depending on the sport. So you may need to get with a sports nutritionist. Maybe that your particular sport, the coach might have some guidelines in terms of what they want the kids to eat before the event and so forth. If it's more of a power type of event, where they are, like a power athlete, think about weightlifting, things like that. That particular person is going to consume more protein, and they're probably going to have a protein snack before. They may have a protein recovery snack after as well. However, if it's more endurance, let's say you've got a kid who's in cross country, in that particular case, they tend to lean, more toward carbs. And all are important. We're going to focus on carbs. We're going to talk about protein. We're going to talk about fats as well. And most of the time, they'll say fats in moderation. Those healthy fats are super, super important. So the healthy fats, making sure that your kids are avoiding trans fats, that they're avoiding hydrogenated oils, and that they're avoiding all of those processed, oils that you see in fast food and so forth, and focusing on the healthy fats, which would be, avocado oil, avocados, olive oil, some of the nuts would be healthy options as well. So focusing on that. And then for protein, again, protein requirements vary depending on what the person is doing. And it can be anywhere from 1 gram of protein per kilogram of body weight as the need. So to get kilograms, you just divide your weight by 2.2 or just cut it in half for some simplicity. And so 1 gram of protein per kilogram of body weight. But if you are really focusing on a lot of those heavier, weightlifting or, maybe it's football season and they're doing some conditioning and they're, adding some muscle and so forth, they may go up as high as 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. So again, it varies tremendously. And then looking at the carbs, if you've got a student who's running, for example, sure, they may increase, some healthy carbs. And that's really the goal here, is to basically focus on whole foods, nutrient dense, clean. Okay. So how do I get carbs that are healthy carbs? Well, maybe it's some brown rice. Maybe it's some quinoa, some things that are mild, that basically are going to stay a little longer. They're complex carbs, takes longer for the body to break them down. But then also you want to look at how does their system function? And, some runners, for example, they don't want to run with something heavy in their stomach. They don't want to run, carb load and then go for a run because they just don't feel well and they're not able to perform as well. One of the things that happens in that instance is, if you have too many carbs in the stomach, all of a sudden your body's spending all of this energy trying to digest when you're trying to run a race. You're trying to get around the track and you need all of the energy. You need all of the oxygen, going toward the muscles. And so basically you want to look at what is the sport, when you look at basketball, when you look at soccer, you look at track, a lot of running, and even football, there's a lot of running, that's going on. But again, the needs are very different depending on the person. And then you also have to take into account, does this person have any allergies? Are they vegan? Do they basically get plant-based nutrition? We do know that athletes can do extremely well, from following a vegan diet, for example. So, what are the needs, and then trying to cater that and make sure that they're getting nutrient dense. Okay. Because not only is it about the calories and the macronutrients are essential to help the body fuel the right way. So when you think of calories, that's sort of like just regular gasoline. The macronutrients would be, that high test type, whatever it is that your car takes. It's very specific to the body. And it's going to help your brain function better. It's going to help your entire body function better as well. So we want to make sure that we're doing that. Hydration is absolutely critical. So, you want to make sure that your student athlete always has, something to drink on hand. Some people prefer water. Some people prefer, a hydration type of drink that maybe has some electrolytes in it, a sports drink. But watch the sugar content in there. A lot of times those drinks will have a lot of garbage added in. So, you really want to make sure that you're reading labels, make sure that it's clean, make sure that it, doesn't have high fructose corn syrup or just all of the garbage. A lot of times they can even have, artificial flavorings and dyes and things like that in there. And you don't want that. You want something that's going to hydrate them efficiently, intracellularly, because that will make a huge difference for them. And then from a recovery standpoint, again, I think this is sports specific. If it involves a lot of weightlifting, it's probably going to be a protein type of recovery, drink or something like that. If it's running, that sort of thing, it could, in fact be, additional carbohydrates. But again, check with the coach. What does the coach want them to be eating? And if you have the luxury of a sports nutritionist, that's even better. Okay. So another big area when I think about student athletes and the things that they have to deal with, is this area of concussion. And it doesn't really matter what sport it is, you can have a concussion. So most schools today will do a baseline concussion test for their athletes. And I just want to encourage you, if that's not something that's being done, pretty much ages 10 and up, you really want to make sure this is done. But if that's not being done at your school, ask why not. Maybe it's something they can bring in. There are so many sports programs out there that love to participate along with student athletes. And that pre-screening can make such a difference, because then if your child does have a hit to the head, they can do, a new screening, and they compare the two. And there will be a difference. If your child has a concussion, you will see a difference in their performance on that exam. I always tell my patients that if they are in sports that has a high risk for concussion, I want them to take some omega-3s, just 1,000 milligrams a day. That's a fish oil. There are plant-based, options as well as far as omega-3. And that helps to protect the brain from shear force injuries, which is kind of what happens when we have a concussion. I also usually encourage my athletes to have a little bit of vitamin D supplementation, which is fantastic for the bones. It's great for metabolism as well. And for some of them, it might just be 1,000 IUs a day, which is, kind of a pediatric dosing. For some of them, it may be more. But these things become very, very important when you look at the whole picture for a student athlete, and how do I help them to stay healthy, to perform at optimal levels, and to basically, be able to succeed in whatever their sport is and participate in those activities. So, those are just some tips, kind of off the top of my head, as far as, information for your student athlete. Next week, we are actually going to be talking about your students' mental health and just some things that you can do to kind of help support them, and just things to be on the lookout for as well as they head into the school year. For a lot of students, they are just returning to the classroom. A lot of kids, the last couple of years have been so different for these kids. So there are a lot of extra things that we kind of need to think about. So I hope you'll plug in next week as we take this one step further, our final series, and talk about your students' mental health. So thanks so much for joining me, everybody. Have a great day. I hope you enjoyed that episode. For more information, visit me at deannaholdren.com. Find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Dr. Deanna Holdren. I really want to hear from you, so message me. I love taking your messages and creating topics from them. Please rate, review, subscribe, and share my show with those who have an interest in health and wellness. Thank you for tuning in, and see you next week.